Okay, so after your trip to Europe, you came back and uh, basically it was the end of 72 into 73.
Sometime around that time. I'm not sure it was the end of 72 or the beginning of 73. Uh, my job at Sperry, we did a consolidation at the time. And I became responsible for some of the outlying groups. I was doing the consolidation for all of Sperry, but we had like 4 places that we were also responsible for. Like Panama City, Florida was one of them. Shreveport, Louisiana was one, and that's what I want to talk about next. In April of 73, I guess it was, I had to make a trip down to Shreveport on business. It so happened that it coincided with the spring vacation for the schools. So Anita was off, and of course Cliff and Cheryl were off too. So I went to Anita and I said, look, why don't we make take a mini vacation? We can fly down to New Orleans. I'll arrange to get a station wagon because Jeff, one of the people who worked for me in the place, his father runs the Hertz counter down there. So we can get a place. We'll drive up to Shreveport, go up. There are ways to go, but we can go up through Mississippi, cover that too. Drive to Shreveport, I'll do my business during the week, and then at the end of the week, we'll go back down to New Orleans. And in effect, we'll have two weekends in New Orleans. Hesitation. It was Easter. It was also Passover. Now, Anita never wanted to eat out during Passover. During the rest of the year, it was fine. We had no problem. Any restaurant was good. Look, we kept the kosher home, and that for all kinds of reasons, and that was sacred. But she had this in her that comes Passover, she doesn't want to eat in a restaurant outside. She doesn't want to eat non-pay tzedakah food. So I said, look, you go down to New Orleans, you got to eat. I mean, if they got such great restaurants down there. Let's just this once. I'll call up the airline. It was Eastern Airlines at that time. And they can arrange for kosher food, which of course will be pay tzedakah. So I talked her into it. So that was fine. So we get on the plane, and sure enough, we have, for the 4 of us, was there a problem? I'm not sure now. Maybe they only had 2 kosher meals. But be that as it may, the kosher meal was like an omelet with matzah. And the matzah made such a hit, all of the people sitting around us were wondering what it was. They wanted a piece, they wanted to try it, and they wanted to know whether they could get the same meals too. So that worked fine. Passover had already begun. We did get the first 2 nights at home. So it was like in the middle of Passover, took care of it. And she very nicely forgot about it. And we did eat in some of the better places in New Orleans. And we spent the weekend there. And I got the station wagon. And we drove up through Mississippi to Shreveport with the station wagon. It didn't turn out to be such a great car. As a matter of fact, it didn't ride that well. And it was a little windy. Maybe there was a storm coming. In any event, we drove up to Shreveport, checked into the place, and I went to work. The next day, left the car, the station wagon at home, and as luck would have it, you really have to speak to Anita and Cheryl about this. There was a tornado in the area. Winds were really ripping up the area. So all they could do was tell me I was safely ensconced at work. But we survived that, or they survived that. It was great for another reason. There was a special restaurant that they had in Shreveport. It was on a river that was all dried up, which is what made it sort of funny. But I don't know, maybe during the summer it might have had some water, but at this time, and it was like at the docks, down at the docks. Private entrance. This is what they call private clubs. it meant you had to be a member to eat there. Well, I had been taken there before, so I knew it. I can't come up with the name of it. It was like a first name, first Italian name, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really classy. Private club, why? To keep out the Negroes, of course.
Uh-huh.
That's what it was. Because if you were not a member, you walked in and said, I want to be a member, they made you a member right then and there.
I see.
As long as the color of your skin was right.
Yes.
But this was service like you've never seen before. You sit down, cloth napkins, of course, tablecloths and everything. They bring around a roll. If you're not careful and you take a bite out of the roll and put it down, they take it away from you and bring you another roll. And bring you fresh rolls. It's just constantly. The service was just unbelievable. The food was fabulous. I don't know yet whether I was into martinis, but I think I probably was.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, everything worked out fine. The kids were especially impressed. I wish I could come up with the name. I couldn't. In any event, it turned out to be a very nice vacation that we had. After the time in Shreveport, we were able to drive back down to New Orleans. We took a different route back, which is the way we always do it. So we saw part of the southern country, the antebellum country.
Mm-hmm.
Got back to New Orleans. Whether it was before or after, we of course hit Preservation Hall. The kids were properly impressed with all of what was going on, I'm sure. Good time was had by all. Get back on the plane to fly back home. And as we're settling into our seats, we hear ourselves paged. Oh, were you the people who wanted the kosher meal?
And Passover was over?
We realized what had happened. I
Uh-huh.
only asked for the kosher meal one way,
Uh-huh.
but they, of course, supplied it both ways. So I faced the facts. I said, yes, we were. So they served us. It was the same basic meal we had that we had on the way down there.
Uh-huh.
And here we were no longer in Passover, but we were still eating matzah and an omelet along with it. So it was a cute little situation. I guess that brings us up to 1974. 1974 was a great year for us for varied reasons, which I'll get into. First, sometime in February, it was still winter, we managed a vacation down in Curacao. And Cheryl and Cliff were with us. As I mentioned before, Jeff had long since decided not to go with us anymore on vacations.
Is that off the coast of...
Curacao is one of the Dutch West Indies off the coast of South America.
Yeah.
It is now part of, I guess it's an independent, or maybe it's a department of the Netherlands, which is made up of Aruba, some island that begins with a B, like Bonaire,
Mm-hmm.
and Curacao.
I see.
I always remember them by ABC.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
But Curacao is the capital. It's a very nice place, very nice. Just in passing, they had one of the synagogues that is claimed to be the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. I keep coming across this at different places, and you have to read the words very carefully because sometimes they'll say it's practicing continuously in practice or continuously in use, or they'll say it's the oldest, but it's been... Anyway, this one was unique, and if I remember correctly, it was the one that had Sephardic touches to it and a sand floor. It actually had sandy floors in it, which was the old style, going back to the desert. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in February. March, of course, was Cliff's bar mitzvah. And the preparations were just as great as before. Now we were a little bit more experienced. The cast of characters changed some. Now our children only had one living grandparent. Both of their grandmothers had passed away. and I'm sorry, the children only had one, and both of Anita's grandmothers had passed away,
Mhm.
so that it wasn't necessary to carry over into Sunday. So what we had there, we again used the Galaxy, and we had the party right after the services. So the services would end in the Wanto Jewish Center, as Jeff was there too, and then we would go off to the Galaxy, Long Island Expressway. I mentioned that before, and it was much smoother. You know, nobody was so orthodox that they wouldn't travel on Saturday anymore, so we didn't have that kind of problem. One thing of note, I told a story during Jeff's bar mitzvah about Anita's principal and co-teacher, another principal, and the business of going out for the beer. I was a little confused. That was during Cliff's bar mitzvah, not Jeffrey's.
Mhm.
During Cliff's bar mitzvah, I have this to mention. One of the guys from Sperry, I invited a table of Sperry people there. Actually, I invited the vice president, but Sal Conigliaro, because I was doing more work with him. And he very nicely called me into his office one morning and told me he really would love to accept, but he cannot. It would set a precedent. He gets invited to many of these things, not just bar mitzvahs, but all kinds of things. And it would be impossible for him to properly attend. So I understood. I ended up inviting somebody else to fill out the table, somebody else from Sperry. Now, one of the guys that came was Jimmy Papazissimos, who later became my boss. You know, I'll mention him again.
Mhm.
But he was the controller of the Air Armament Division. He was controller of the surface, whatever.
Yes, yes, controller.
Division names changed. He was
Yes.
one of the controllers,
Mhm.
and we were pretty friendly. And as the name would imply, Jimmy was Greek, and I think his children were being brought up Catholic,
Mhm.
but that's not important. But Jimmy gets me after the services, you know, after Cliff did such a great job of reading the Haftarah from the Torah, whatever he was doing, and he really, whereas Jeffrey had a very nice voice and very soothing, Cliff sort of took the thing and just rang it out, you know, really loud and everything. And Jimmy says to me, you know, he just realized why Jews are so smart. Anybody that could read this language, that he was looking at the Hebrew, of course, which doesn't use the English letters that we're used to,
Yes.
says you have to be smart to do that.
Yes.
I thought that was a cute thing.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, they were invited to the party, and just a few words about Cliff's bar mitzvah. As I said before, some of the people, many of the people who were at Jeffrey's bar mitzvah, of course, weren't around anymore. Both grandmothers, well, one of the grandmothers wasn't there for Jeffrey's either, but the only grandparent that Cliff had at his bar mitzvah was Grandpa Max, Anita's father. And he was there with his second wife, Molly, which breaks off into all kinds of stories.
Mhm.
His second wife, how many wives did he have? Well, it depends upon which laws you're looking at. Those are, well, I take off on that. When Anita's mother died, she was living with us. She didn't die in the house, but he was living with us, her father.
Mhm.
He was not an easy man to live with.
Mhm.
And one day I come home from work, and Anita says, I don't know where my father is. He left this morning, and I haven't heard from him all day. And she was quite worried. A little later on, maybe 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock, he comes walking in the door. Anita says, "Where were you? We were worried." My father-in-law gives the kind of answer that only he can give. None of your business. What do you mean, none of my business? You know, we're worried about you. Forget about it. You know, that's it. What he was doing, and this wasn't very long after my mother-in-law died, he was already looking for somebody else to keep house for him. And he tied up with Molly. Molly was a widow of many years. She and her husband were close friends with my in-laws. And the funny thing is, she used to tell my mother-in-law, "How do you stand them? How do you take them?" I'd never let them talk like that to me or whatever he was doing, you know, whatever she witnessed and stuff. Yet she ended up marrying him. Why? You know the old story, wheels for meals? Well, he was still driving. Not very well, but he was still driving. He never drove very well. So Molly was his wife at the time that Cliff was bar mitzvah.
Mhm.
So naturally she was invited to the bar mitzvah. And it went without a hitch. So to continue the story of 1974, in April of 74, I was given a promotion at Sperry. The general manager of the Marine Division had asked to see me. I went in there and he said he'd like to offer me the job of being worldwide controller for the Marine Systems Division of Sperry. And of course, I jumped at it. It was very nice, you know. It might involve more traveling than I had done, or might involve European traveling, because after I accepted, the first thing he said was, "You got to go out to England tomorrow, quickly," you know. And the sales manager, and probably the strongest guy, except for the general manager in the whole division, was Sid Cohen. No relation, but a very bright engineer type. And he said, "We need you out there. You have to come out and sit in a review." He said, "Well, I'll meet you after you land." Actually, he was in England already, and so they got the tickets for me, and we took the evening plane, as you always do when you fly to Europe, and you get there a little sleepy, at the equivalent of 4 o'clock in the morning, only it's already 7 o'clock over there.
Mhm.
Normally, and this I did many times afterwards, when I would do this, the first thing I would do is take a nap. But make sure I woke up around noontime. So happened that one time I didn't wake up at noontime, and the next thing you know, I opened my eyes. This was much later on, and it was already 12 o'clock, and I had an 11 o'clock meeting. Embarrassing moments, but they were used to it. They were used to these Americans coming over there and having trouble right off the bat.
Yes.
But Sid, he took it in his own hands. He met me at the airport. We got out to the hotel. He said, "Get yourself showered and shaved. We have a 10 o'clock meeting." And there we go. The day started, and we went through the meeting, and this was, I was getting used to the whole idea. This whole business of being the worldwide controller was very interesting. I had a local controller who reported to me, and his headquarters were in Charlottesville. And I had a European controller whose headquarters were in London. So after this first meeting, I decided I had to go see our other places. I had to visit with them, speak with the controllers there. And we had a place in Genoa, Italy, in Amsterdam, not Amsterdam, what's the port city in Holland? Rotterdam.
Rotterdam.
In Rotterdam, we had a place in Antwerp in Belgium, and I guess that's it. So I arranged for a trip that would cover all 4 of these places.
Nothing in the Pacific or Asia?
No, we're only talking about Europe.
Yes.
At this time. It's just the four places I mentioned. And actually, one general manager took care of Antwerp and Rotterdam together. He lived right in the middle. And there's an interesting tidbit to that. I arranged that I was going to cover all of these places to visit with them, become familiar with the personnel. And I had the European controller meet me in London, and we took off from there. We flew into Amsterdam probably, and we were met there by the general manager of the Belgium and Holland offices, and he invited us to his home for dinner, and that was an experience. His home was like right on the border, halfway between the two plants that he managed. Excuse me. So we went to his home, and he had a daughter who was like an 8th grader. That's when I found out that when you're in Holland, and he was still in Holland, that girl went to school from 8 in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon.
Long hours.
Nothing like what we're used to
No,
over here.
no.
She was carrying 5 languages. They're so great with the language over there. It's just amazing. Makes you feel awfully tongue-tied. The languages, I don't know if I remember them all, but of course, being in Holland, she's Dutch being her natural language, and maybe even German, but she also was studying French and Spanish and English and Italian and who knows what else. It was just great. You know, one of the things I've learned about Holland is the Dutch people only want to speak English to you. They try. You know, I made a past comment earlier on that the French were not at all like that. The French insisted you speak French. The Dutch, more than any other group in Europe that I come across, were anxious. They were anxious to improve their English, recognizing how important it was. So even if you were to try to go their way, they would sort of push you into English. So here was this little girl who was already a linguist of sorts. So that was the experience we had there. We went to Italy, and the guy who ran the Italian thing was really something out of the movies. He was very outgoing, very friendly, and I learned something else about Europeans, especially Italians. You know, they've spoken about what's a comfortable space between people as they're talking. Now, we have developed our space. We all understand it, whatever it is. You just fall into it naturally. Well, the Italians, especially this general manager, was very friendly. Their space was right up against you. It was amazing. And I saw it happen to other people. I would speak to him, and little by little, I felt myself being pushed against the wall. All the time, even when he came up to my, you know, it was just one of these things. But anyway, he took us to a very beautiful place to eat, Genoa. And I've always wanted to get back there. I wanted to get Anita back, but I never did. We settled for Venice, as I mentioned before. But Genoa is like it's right on the water. The cliffs are on the side, and they have the seawater with beautiful yachts, probably multi-million-dollar yachts over there. And the weather is right, and it was right when I was there. I took this trip, and I actually put together a journal. I wrote a long, many-page letter to Anita, telling her about the trip. And it got home, and it served very nicely. I don't know where it is right now. I have to find it and maybe put it in with our other mementos. But it was a trip to enjoy.
And you were then oriented in your new position.
Yes, I was oriented in the new position, and the position was worldwide meant just that.
Mm-hmm.
And I made many trips. We used to have monthly reviews. So like once a month I would go to England. I didn't go to the other places as often, only if there was a problem or something important that had to be discussed. then I might go to the others. I don't know that I ever got back to Belgium or Netherlands in this job. But I did get back to Italy at one point. We were having a problem down there, and as I say, I probably hit, it wasn't London, it was, oh boy, this is bad. I'm not bringing the names back.
Uh-huh.
But it was a place that I particularly wanted to pronounce because I learned how to pronounce it the way the British do,
Uh-huh.
so that I could impress British people with the proper pronunciation. It'll come to me later on. But this was good. And this was in 1974, as I said. Now, we still had much to go in 74. Comes November,
Mm-hmm.
and our niece, Rebecca, has her bat mitzvah. Now, this is the only niece that I have. I mean, she has 4 brothers. My sister has 3 sons. So she and Cheryl are the only girls. I go further. If my parents could have had all of their grandchildren together, actually Myron had 4 sons out of 5. Naomi had 3 sons out of 3. And if you count the 2 babies that we lost, who were both boys,
Mm-hmm.
we would have had 4 boys and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put them all together, then my parents would have had 11 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. Anyway, that's off the track a little. So it so happens that Rebecca's bat mitzvah is held on the same day, or at least the same weekend, as my 50th birthday. All right? So we go there, and very nicely, my brother arranged to announce to the people who were at all of our relatives, of course. And of course, I was like the second guest of honor, if you will. Not to take anything away from Rebecca, because she was part of it too. I
Yes.
think she's always been fond of me and I of her
Mm-hmm.
as we went through life. But they had a big birthday cake for me. And they arranged to sing happy birthday and all this, and I was really, that was fun. So, little did I know that some other people, Anita, of course, being included, were arranging to surprise me with the 50th birthday party,
The next day.
catered at home
Uh-huh.
the next day,
Uh-huh.
next night.
Uh-huh.
Was it Saturday? This would have been, I have to check that out.
May have been the same night.
No,
No.
it wasn't the same night. It couldn't have been the same night because they really worked a fast one on me. The day that it happened, I was doing work over at my brother's office. We had this Cobra insurance at that time, and I was doing books, Cobra, so I was over there working. I drove up there, and for some reason or other, I needed the car. So in effect, when I finished my work, I needed help to get home. And my brother would say, just a minute, wait, and what I didn't know is when he finally got me home, I walked into this big party, all celebrating my 50th anniversary.
50th birthday.
50th birthday.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
anniversary of my birthday. And it was just wonderful.
And it was a surprise.
And it was a complete surprise.
Thought the cake the day before had covered everything.
Yes, I thought that I had gotten enough acknowledgement the day before, and not to steal anything from Rebecca. She was very generous with the accolades and everything. So that here I was walking in there like a schlump. You know what a schlump is.
Yes.
Needing a shave,
Uh-huh.
and everybody is celebrating, and I love it. I love these things. It just takes me all, it's just fun.